Hello and welcome to the tutorial on robotic process automation using UiPath. In this session, we will consider the topic of data tables. What are data tables? How are they created? And how to access each and every element present in the data tables is what we will see in this session. So data tables are the information containers wherein every piece of information is represented in the form of row and column. So every column has got its own name, and each and every row of information can be stored in the data tables and can be fetched using the appropriate methods. So we have a specific data type in UiPath Studio for storing the values in data tables. So that we will see it in the demonstration. So let us jump into our UiPath Studio software and let's create a new flowchart and let us name it as data tables and say create. So this is the basic designer panel that we will get once we create the flowchart. So the first and the foremost activity that we need to add for the creation of data tables is the build data table activity. So that I'll search it here in the activities panel. So this is the activity that we will use to build or create a data table. So we'll double click here in order to see what it contains. So this contains a phrase wherein we can create the information in the form of row and column. So I'll double click here once again and a pop-up window will appear, and here we can specify the information in the form of row and column. So by default it has got two columns here and two rows of information. So we can add more and more columns by clicking on this plus icon, and we can go on adding more and more rows of information by just hitting the enter button after entering the last column value. Okay, so now at this moment we'll create a data table of student details. Okay, so I can edit a particular column and change its name and its type. So let me click here on this pen icon so that I can edit this column. So here it says, so here I'll say name and let the data type be string. Allow null, yes. Default value, of course we can keep it blank. And unique, no, this is not the column which is unique, so let's not click on this and say okay. So this is my first column which says name, and let us edit the second column as well and let us give it a name as gender. Okay, and let us change the data type to string and allow null, not it is checked. Default value not required. Unique, no. Max length -1, not to worry about any of these fields. So we can click on the OK button. So we have added two columns, so let us add one more column here. Okay, and let us name it as blood group. Okay, let the data type be string and rest all of the fields be same as it is. So let us click on the OK button and here we go. So we have three columns of information. So now it is time to enter the information. So simply I can click here and I can edit this and type the information. So the first name that I'm going to write here is Ramesh M for male, and blood group say A positive. Okay, and you can just hit the enter button so that it will go to the second row. So here I'll say Suhana. So gender, let it be F, and let the blood group be B positive. Okay, I'll hit the enter now so that I'll be added up with one more row. So here I'll say Suresh, let the gender be M, and say O positive. Okay, so once we are done with the number of columns and number of rows being added, we can just hit the OK button here. Okay, so this is how we create the data tables, and we can store all of this information into a particular variable of data table type. So that we will do it now. So let us go to the variables panel and let us create a variable called as my table. Okay, and let us change the data type to, the variable type to system.data.datatable. So if you are unable to see it in this drop down, you can just go to the browser for types and just search for data tables. There you need to find this system.data.datatable and you need to select this. And default value not required here. So we have created the variable, and the same variable we will use it here in the output section of the properties panel. So I'll use this my table. So whatever the data table that we have created gets stored in this my table variable. Okay, so now let us go back to our workflow. Now the next task is to print whatever we have added up in the data table. So for that we have a specific activity called as output data table. Okay, so that we will use it here so that the entire data table that we have created gets converted into a string format. Okay, so let us connect it with the previous activity. So now to this output data table activity, we need to provide two parameters. One is, and those parameters can be found on the properties panel. So two values that needs to be given are the input and the output. So in the input we should specify the data table. So in our case it is my table. Okay, and the output will be in the form of string. So for that we need to create a variable. So we can create it here and say create variable. You can also go for clicking Ctrl K. So here I'll say result. So everything gets stored in the form of text, or you can say string, in the result variable. So now ultimately we need to print it using a simple message box activity. So here I'll use that result so that the entire tabular information is displayed. Okay, so this is how we build the data table and try to print its content. So let us run this workflow. So it has started the debugging, and now it has started the execution of the workflow. It has built the data table and it has converted into a string format, and ultimately it will display it in the message box. So this is it. So entire information is displayed here in the message box. Okay, name, gender, blood group, and all the 3 rows of information is displayed here. Okay. So this is how we create the data table in UiPath Studio software. And now let us try to fetch each and every information row wise and try to print them. Okay, so for that what we will do is let us delete this message box and the output data table. Okay, so in order to display every row of information one by one, we need to make use of a specific activity called as for each row. There is an activity called as for each row, so that we need to use here. Okay, so let us click on this for each row, and for each row in the data table that we have, so it is my table, so it will loop through every row of the data table and it will try to do the actions that you specify in the body. Okay, so we'll simply use a simple message box here in order to display every row of information. So in our data table we had name, gender, and the blood group. So we will display them one by one here. So the first thing is the name, so that I'll concatenate it here with the actual value that we want to represent from the row. So row, in the braces we should specify the name, and we should also be converting it into string format. And to this we will add one more string, say hyphen, and then we'll add the next part, that is gender. Okay, so that we can access it using the row, and say gender, and to this we'll add one more hyphen in between, and to this we will add one more thing, that is blood group, and say plus once again to concatenate, and row of, in the double quotations we should specify the blood group. Okay, so we can have a hyphen here as well, so that we can display it appropriately. Okay, so of course we missed this dot to string for the last 2 values, so that every information that you're representing will be converted into the string format. Okay, so dot to string, so after the blood group and after the gender we will add one more hyphen here, so that we'll display the information in the appropriate format. So let us save this. Okay, so now let us go back to our data tables workflow. So let us run this workflow once again. Now it has started the debugging and started the execution. Now it has displayed the information in the message box. So name is Ramesh, gender Yum, blood group is A+. So if I hit the OK button now, it displays the second name, gender, as well as blood group. And the third one is also displayed, Suresh, Yum, and blood group to be O positive. So this is how we try to create the data tables in UiPath, and you can access each and every row of information by using for each row activity, and you can work around with every cell of the data table and try to perform some other set of activities that are needed. Okay, thank you for watching.